All right, and that's a wrap. The president shaking hands with the Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte, finishing up their joint press conference there. A couple news items coming out of that. Our president says he'll meet with Iran. He's happy to sit down with them. He doesn't think they're ready yet, but he pretty much will sit down with anyone. He said that there don't need to be any conditions. He would meet with them, and he thinks the dialogue is very good. He talked a little bit about immigration. He said yes, he would be looking at a government shutdown if he can't get what he needs for funding the border wall. But he also said he would always leave room for negotiation, that he would never draw a red line, unlike President Obama. Anyway, back with reaction, we have with me Moody's chief economist, John Lonski. We also have Fox News contributor David Webb. Good to see you both. John, your thoughts on what we just saw?
Well, you know, there's no big surprise in this press conference. From what I could see, I think the president made it clear that he's very much concerned about the immigration issue, and he left open the possibility that perhaps we don't necessarily need a tangible wall there, but perhaps all what we need to do is enforce immigration laws as they currently stand, somehow get the money to do it. It may take less than $25 billion to accomplish that. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I was kind of interested with his approach about meeting some people. You know, he's taken some criticism, certainly, David Webb, for meeting with Kim Jong-un. He now says he'll meet with Rouhani. I got to tell you, I kind of like it, because I feel that it's refreshing. Too often, you know, everybody's up on their high horse and no, the president of the United States is not going to talk to anyone. And he's saying, look, you know, we may not get along with these people, but why not at least be able to have a dialogue? Your reaction to that?
Well, I think it's encouraging to hear. I mean, world leaders, our president obviously included, have to have the ability to speak with each other. Yes, there are other teams, State Department, other agencies that get involved at different levels. But those meetings need to happen between the leaders. They need to sit down and talk about their principles with each other and their goals. And coming out of the reaction that we got in the Obama years, when President Obama would say he would meet with anyone without preconditions, here we have a president who was actually met while having those, whether it's a precondition or meetings prior to that, the appropriate agencies, State Department under now Mike Pompeo. We're seeing the development of a doctrine of engaging others and having real talk versus the poll-tested political talk we've had in the past. I mean, he was blunt with the EU. He was blunt in Brussels. He's straightforward with Theresa May and with the Italian Prime Minister. And I got to say to the press, let me give call it a shout out to the press. Way different than last week, where the reporters were asking questions of substance. I think we got a lot out of this. This is what I like to see.
What are you comparing it to? Which press conference?
The one with the Prime Minister, with the president of the EU, where there was just a shout fest in the Rose Garden. Look at what happened today. I think this is a lesson in two world leaders stayed in their positions.
John, have we made progress on the international front as a result of the change in the presidency?
Well, I think we have. Look at our trade relations with Europe, where now we're getting serious consideration of cutbacks in tariffs. That would be a great benefit, European and U.S. economies. That's equivalent to a tax cut. I think that the president's a little bit more candid about the problems we have with other countries in the world, which is very helpful. There's a lot of openness. But as it stands, the global economy still has many risks, many problems. And we should, take note of the following. Europe suffers from an immigration crisis that's brought on by abject poverty in the Middle East and in Africa. We suffer from an immigration problem in the United States brought on by the very great poverty we see in Latin America. This is a world economy that's not really running on all four cylinders.
No, I hear you on that. In other words, some of these emerging markets or developing markets are really still facing so many challenges, which is why you have this outpouring of people trying to come into other countries. Europe made some mistakes. I think we can all agree, Dave, and you and I have talked about this before. Europe made a lot of mistakes. I mean, Angela Merkel, she just opened her arms wide, and they have a real problem there now in Germany. Sweden even as well. You talk to even those on the left, which is pretty much everyone in Sweden, but anyway, you talk to those on the very left, and they'll still admit that in Sweden it's a problem because economically they cannot afford to take on this many people and absorb them into their society. I mean, there are limits, which is the reason why, and you want to get in here, so I'm going to go to you, John. We have borders. Quickly for you.
And the average American is saying to themselves, why haven't we done more to solve problems in the Middle East and in Africa and in Latin America so that we don't have these issues related to illegal immigration?
Well, then you're talking about, Americans forking over their hard-earned money to try and solve problems around the world so that then maybe they don't come in. I think a lot of Americans would say, hey, David, just don't let people in unless they are qualified to be here in the first place and unless we can handle the population increase.
Right. And here's a similar theme that you hear from the Italian prime minister and you hear from the president. A merit-based system. What do you offer to this country? The one thing any nation cannot do is have unfettered immigration, legal or illegal. You have to have a managed system. Your example on Sweden, I think people need to pay even closer attention because the people in Sweden, and I have many friends there and friends living here from Stockholm and other areas, the people have told the government there this is unsustainable, just like in the United States. And by the way, Italy, given the breakdown of Libya, you look at Darna, you look at Sirte, the ports that lead to southern Italy, you look at the migration, the refugee, you have to have some control of that. And they address one of the possible solutions, which is stabilization, including economic stabilization, which is needed, especially in Italy and in Libya.
All right. Look, it's just common sense, right? I mean, you have a country. You ought to know who's there, and you ought to be able to control who's coming in and out. Anyway, thank you so much. Good to see you both, John and David.